Hi kids, it's Mr. Erik with another science quest for you. Today we're interviewing Courtney Kloske. She is a PhD candidate in physiology at the University of Kentucky doing Alzheimer's research. Hi Courtney, how you doing?
Hi Eric, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. You describe yourself as a neuro-immunologist, which is a branch of neuroscience. Could you explain it to the kids, please?
Yeah, so I want to back up a little bit right before we get into what a neuroimmunologist is. I want to kind of preface it with I'm a graduate student, so I am not an official neuroimmunologist. I just kind of am a neuroimmunologist based off of what my project is. So I don't have a fancy title yet. Give me a few years.
Yes.
But kind of what a neuroimmunologist is, in my mind, is you can break up that term. So we'll have neuro and we'll have immunology. So the neuro, going to be a neuroscientist, so mainly focusing on the brain and what's happening in your brain. So all of the different cells and everything going on. And then we have the immunologist side, so kind of how your body responds to an infection or something going on that's not supposed to be there. And so when you combine these two fields, you just put up immunology in your brain, and so it's how your brain is going to help prevent problems going on and kind of clear up anything that's going on in your brain.
So in your research that you're doing right now, what is your normal day like? Obviously you're a PhD student, right? So what do you usually do when you go to the lab, for example?
Yeah, so my typical day kind of depends on class schedules and different organizations I'm a part of. So it's not a normal day per se, but if I have classes, then I have to schedule all of my experiments around those. But typically I'll get into the lab and I'll read a few papers, answer some emails, and then either go to class in the morning or start an experiment right away. And then while experiments are running, be working on my computer for doing data analysis to kind of understand what all this research means that I'm doing, or I'll be studying for a class. And so just juggling class with research is kind of what a typical day is for me.
It's a lot of work.
Yes.
It's a lot of work. So you are researching Alzheimer's. Could you explain a little bit about, I guess, the brain and then how Alzheimer's relates to that, and also the research you're doing, I guess, in reducing Alzheimer's, right?
Yeah.
Rid of
Okay.
Alzheimer's.
So I am going to pull up my screen right now. I kind of want to show you some of the cells that are in the brain to kind of show you where my research is focusing on. So in your brain, you have a lot of different cells. This is just 4 of the cells in your brain. So we have these neurons, and these guys are going to be what are sending signals through your brain. And there will be a video that you can watch after this kind of focusing on neurons. And these are going to be what helps you make memories and think, and everything that your body does, you need neurons to do that. These oligodendrocytes, they help the neurons function. So they really go and they help protect a bunch of different neurons at once. You have these astrocytes, which help give the neurons nutrients, and they help out throughout the brain. And then my personal favorite are these cute little microglia down here. These are the immune cells of the brain. So that immunologist part, in my mind, this is where the microglia come in. And so what these little cells do is, I read something before that called them a ninja of the brain. And so basically they're just sitting, they're waiting, they're probing the environment. Just normally this is what they look like in your actual brain. They're just green for this image. But they're just sitting there waiting. You don't really know that they're there. They're just probing, making sure nothing goes wrong. And then when it sees something, so if it sees a little bacteria come in or anything, they respond and they go in and they go and eat it and they kill it, and then they go back to resting. So they're really fast and they're literally like ninjas in your brain. So they're super cool. And so these guys are really big in Alzheimer's disease, because with Alzheimer's disease you have things that come up in your brain, and you need these microglia to help get rid of them. And so here on the right is a picture of a brain. So we have a healthy brain, so you can see it's super big and there's no big divots in it or anything. You can see that looks good. That's what you want your brain to look like. And then when we look over here, this is the diseased brain. So this is when you have Alzheimer's disease, your brain typically shrinks and a lot of those important cells in your brain start dying, and so the structure is not as intact. And this is kind of what happens with Alzheimer's disease, and it affects the areas of your brain typically involved with memory. So that's why a lot of people with Alzheimer's disease have problems with memory and kind of just functioning. So this is what happens to your brain structurally. But what does this? And that's kind of where researchers are looking. And there are these two things that show up in your brain. So we have amyloid beta, and it's basically just this sticky substance. So it's like little tiny, basically just filaments, and they just clump together and they cause these little cloud-like structures in the brain, and they're gonna stop all of the signals that are going on. So if you have neurons signaling, these are gonna be preventing that from happening. And you also have these neurofibrillary tangles, or tau tangles. Sorry, that was a big word. But this is basically just causing those neurons that are important for signaling and everything happening. This is going to make them start dying because they can't send those signals properly. And so these two pathologies are really big, and those microglia are in the brain to try and help prevent these. But there's a lot of research being looked into. Are the microglia actually helping? Are they actually able to clear these? What is happening in your brain? And so that's kind of a lot of where my research fits, is how the microglia are working on these two pathologies.
Is that what you're actually researching right now?
Yes, so I'm looking at the immune response to the pathology with a little bit of a genetics component. So the genes that are at play with Alzheimer's, looking at how it works.
Actually, can you just comment on, I've read a lot recently about the advances in Alzheimer's research. Is there anything you can comment on about that? For example, how they're doing? I know this is a problem, of course, I've known quite a few people in my life that have had it. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting to hear how the research is advancing.
So the field right now, it's still like every day we're finding new things. There's new papers coming out, new research. Everybody's looking at different aspects, and we're trying to build this whole picture of what Alzheimer's disease is. And some key studies that have kind of come out recently. There's a big one that happened in Scandinavia, so over, not in the United States, different country. And they were looking at how you can help your brain by focusing on your whole body. So doing exercise, eating well, staying social. And they found that even people that have a family prevalence to Alzheimer's disease, or if they're more likely to get Alzheimer's disease, there is still a way to prevent it without any medicine or anything. You can start exercising, eating well, and that will help. We have those studies going on right now in the US to see if we can also do what they can do. And then there's plenty of different drug trials going on. There always is, you'll see in the news, mainly the ones that are going to keep failing, because once they get to a certain point, while in the news it looks bad and it says we have a failed trial, that actually means that the researchers can learn why that trial failed, and the next trial we can try something different. And so a failed trial, it only failed really in the public, and yes, it's not going to be a new drug that we can give, but it's also something for us to be able to take and say, okay, we did this one thing, now let's go try this next one. So every day we keep building, and we're hoping to build a big picture for all of this so we can target it.
And also talking about that, when you talk about the media reporting on research, the media always reports on the research before it's actually finished.
Yes.
So it's always giving kind of a skewed view of what actually is happening in the research, because you're getting the research while it's still going on. And that a lot of the things that they report on are not the final results.
Yeah.
Results could be completely different than what they're actually just explaining. So always be aware of that when you're watching something on television.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that description of Alzheimer's in the brain and your research.
You're welcome.
The next question I usually ask is, do you have any interesting stories from your research or at school or anything like that would be interesting for the kids?
Yes. So this is me at science fair. So all of the kids on this that are watching this, you might be younger, you might be in high school, you might be approaching science fair age, but I got into science and research through science fair. And this was probably the biggest, most exciting thing that had ever happened in my life. And I went, and I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I don't know if I know science. And I was able to go into a big lab and do a project. My freshman year of high school, I looked at my dog's DNA, and I was seeing if he had a genetic mutation to see if he was predisposed to a back problem in dachshunds, because there had been a study, and so we were like, we might as well. So I was able to do that. The project completely failed. None of it worked. I tried it 4 times. My dog to this day still hates cotton swabs because we used them. It was a long time ago. But even though my project failed and it didn't work at all, I was still able to go to science fair, present my work, and I was able to go to the International Science Fair. And so I ended up going 3 years in a row. So my freshman year was on my dog, my sophomore year was on Parkinson's disease, and my junior year was on leukemia. And so I know for a high schooler that was crazy projects, but for all of them I was able to go to the science fair, and I went to San Jose, California, and Los Angeles and Pittsburgh for free on these trips. And I'm still friends with all of these people that are still in these pictures, and most of them are still scientists, and they've gone to med school and they're doctors. And so my way into science was science fair. And I kind of want to tell the kids that don't just take, when you see science fair, go brush it off or do it the day before. If you're interested in science, this is a great way into it, because from freshman year of high school, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. It's not common, don't think you have to do that. But for me, I was able to go and learn and see all these things and get really excited. So don't brush off your science fair projects, actually do them and care about them, because you get trophies and trips if you end up going to this far, and it's a great experience.
And the kids here in our town do have a science fair, and you know I've been there a couple of times, so yes, listen to what she's saying, do good projects. And the last question I usually ask is, what advice would you give a kid who's interested in becoming either a neuroscientist or a physiologist or work in Alzheimer's? What kind of advice would you give?
So I kind of think, first off, all of that requires constantly asking questions. So you always have to be curious, you always have to be wondering something. So if you want to be a neuroscientist or something of that kind, you have to be wondering, how does your body function? How does your brain work? How do you make all of these connections? How do you think? Because if you don't start asking those questions, and if you don't care about them, then there's no reason to go start on a trail of science if you have no interest in it. So you need to start asking questions and looking around and reading different books. There's plenty of them out there. Just grab one and start reading about the brain or Alzheimer's disease. And I think that's incredibly important, is just start asking questions and don't stop asking questions. And then also, while you're asking those questions, ask for help. If you have any questions, there are plenty of people out there that will willingly give you the answers, and they'll help you find what you need. And so I think that's a big part of getting started in science and staying to science, is that you always need to be asking and just keep your mind working. And then maybe more in the Alzheimer's field specifically, I know a lot of people in it have a family connection to Alzheimer's. And so I think that if you have that personal connection, or if you have a draw toward a certain disease, if it's incredibly important to you, you can go and do research on that, or you can advocate for a certain disease. So if maybe Alzheimer's isn't something that you're interested in, and cancer is, or a different disease, they're all, we need research on all of these. So find something that means something to you and give back to it. I think that's really important.
So thank you. I just wanted to, if there's anything else you would like to tell the kids about your research or anything, please, let us know.
One thing that I kind of want to lead them on, I know that they're probably younger than thinking about graduate school. If anything, they're thinking about college. But even going into college or going into graduate school, I think it's important to not think, I'm just kind of gonna go and brush it all off. Like, you need to go in, you need to go in with a mindset. You can obviously switch whatever your major is or anything, but start, again, asking questions and start trying to meet new people and network and find out what is meant for you. And I think by getting involved with different clubs, so if you're in middle school and you're like, I think I want to do science, go find a science club. There's got to be one someplace near you. Or if you like French, go join a French club. And I think by branching out and doing all of those things, it would be, you can figure out what you want to do that way. It doesn't have to be science. I'm not going to be mad at you if you watch this and you decide not to do science. Like, go find what's right for you through whatever stage you're in. That's probably where I'd leave you.
And come to my science club when we're back open again.
Yes.
I know I have some kids that are really into it. They're going to be scientists in the future. So thank you for doing this interview with us. Thank you.
You're welcome. If any kids have any questions about Alzheimer's or anything, you can feel free to send them to me, and I'd gladly answer any questions they have.
I will send them forward to you. Thank you, and good luck in your future endeavors. And
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.